Hey everyone, welcome back to the Caderna podcast. I'm your host, Brian Caderna. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing entrepreneurship, innovation, and of course, artificial intelligence. I'll be joined by James Barrood. If you're not familiar with James, let me give you a quick background. Named on the Power 100 list and Top 100 Influencers list, James Barrood is among the leaders of the East Coast's innovation ecosystem. He's the founder of Innovation Plus, a curated global community of engaged entrepreneurs and innovators. He recently concluded 5 years as the CEO of Tech United, a regional trade association based out of New Jersey. Prior to this, he led the top-ranked Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at Fairleigh Dickinson University for over 10 years. In 2021, James gave a popular TEDx talk on how innovative immigrants are helping to save millions of people with the remarkably fast development of COVID vaccines and treatments. James is the author of the book Entrepreneurship and Innovation: Global Insights from 24 Leaders and co-author of Lessons from the Great Recession. James holds an MBA from Texas A&M University and a bachelor's in economics from Rutgers University. Join us as we really get into artificial intelligence today and what it holds for the future. Without further ado, my conversation with James Barrood.
Is going to require work and time and sweat and toil.
If money wasn't an issue, what would I be doing?
Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out.
Change is the only constant.
The Caderna Podcast.
Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I think this is certainly timely. And, you have such a cool background where you kind of blend, tech and entrepreneurship, two things I'm really interested in. So for you personally, like, how did it begin? Would you say that you were a businessman first, or were you a techie first? Like, how did that come about?
Certainly a businessman, right? So as you mentioned, I worked at an entrepreneurship center for 17 years, right? And I was only going to do that for maybe 2 or 3 years. I had just come out of grad school, and I just thought this is a really special job. I was about to actually take a marketing job with a corporate, and I just said, let's do this. I come from an entrepreneurial family business background. So I just thought I'd do it for 2 or 3 years, and it was so fun and impactful that I did it for 17 years. And then I was recruited away to lead this trade association. That was a larger platform to help people, help entrepreneurs, help leaders succeed. And so that got me more into tech. But, entrepreneurship, it has always been tech related in many ways, right? Because the new technology helps entrepreneurs scale quicker. So when I started, Brian, it costs a lot to start a business. You fast forward till today, it's about 1/100th the cost to start a business. You could do it, in your bedroom, essentially, at a fraction of the cost. So, technology is a great enabler for entrepreneurship.
Sure. And so, like, as you're working with a lot of these startups or, venture capital, how do you feel like, how do you get up to speed, with a business background to, what the idea is? If somebody's, pitching you or showcasing a new idea on AI or some gadgetry, and that's not your background, you're not the software engineer or cybersecurity expert or something like that. How do those folks who are in venture capital, how do they really find the value there? How do they maybe understand that, aside from just seeing that, hey, this guy looks like a great business leader?
Sure. Well, every business, needs to have a plan to scale, right? And so depending on the technology, that scaling can go, hopefully very fast, right? But sometimes it's not as fast. So a retail business or a product business, those businesses take a little longer to get to scale and get to that higher sort of valuation where a venture capitalist or angel investor can realize a big return on their money. Right.
Yep.
So as far as the technology, ever changing, right? We've gone through so many changes from the web to Web3 to crypto and everything in between, IoT, I can name them all, but now we're at AI, right? So keeping up with AI is sort of, it's hard, right? Because it's happening so quickly. But if you understand the basic fundamentals of artificial intelligence, and now with generative artificial intelligence, with GPT, you can see that it really is a game changer for the industry, for all industries, right? So I think, again, hard to keep up with technology, but
It is.
you know, if you sort of just stay abreast of the news and read a lot and listen to a lot of really great podcasts trying to explain what's going on, you can get a sense for it. But the fundamentals, Brian, are still the same, right? Do you have a good entrepreneur, a good team, a good market size, good potential to get from here to a billion or whatever that number is? That doesn't change. And then again, when you're talking about AI right now, there's so much hype. There's a mad rush of companies. So you have thousands, tens of thousands of companies rushing in. Who will be the winners? So that's the real concern right now.
Yeah.
A lot of money going into it, but there will only be a subset of winners at the end of the day, and that's 2, 3, 5 years.
Hi there. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Pardon this commercial interruption, but this episode has been brought to you by Weekly Wealthy Wisdom, my weekly e-newsletter that tens of thousands of subscribers already enjoy getting in their inbox every Monday. In Weekly Wealthy Wisdom, you'll find my latest insights on health and wealth in less than a 2-minute read, including some of my favorite quotes, books, products, health hacks, paragraphs to ponder, and much more. Start your week out right with Weekly Wealthy Wisdom. Now back to the show. I think that's what's so difficult is if we just go back to, when the internet was coming of age, then obviously that led to the .com bubble where it was like, oh, this whole concept is so revolutionary. It's so great. But then, like you mentioned, all of these companies, everybody jumps on the bandwagon and it's like, who survives? Who comes out the other side? You kind of had something similar, with crypto, where now there's all these different cryptocurrencies coming about, which one is the real Bitcoin or what's next? With AI, it seems like a similar conversation. What maybe can you speak to that of just the monsters, the Googles, the Microsofts that say, hey, we'll just do it ourselves versus, two guys in their garage, they're saying, we think we have something novel here. Is there a place for that? Or is it just so hard to compete, with the monster company or then with governments?
Yeah, well, I think there is an opportunity for startups to compete. It's wide open space. There will be an option for entrepreneurs to collaborate or partner with the big tech, right? And I don't want to get too technical, but those will all run LLMs, large language models, right? So the big tech companies will have those, but there will also be a fragmentation of these large language models where you get all your data from. So there will be multiple opportunities to move forward, right? Again, if you pick the right niche, right, then and you get traction, then you could build some barriers and get to a place where the company is very valuable. But a lot of it is to be determined, frankly. There is a lot of talk about the big tech coming in and just, sweeping up all the potential, but I think that's probably overblown. Yes, they will leverage it. Yes, they will be super successful in taking advantage of the technology of artificial intelligence for their own current business models, but also maybe for some extended business models, which go into new businesses, right? So I'm hopeful, but we've seen how big tech can be sort of super competitive and squashing innovation or buying it up, right? So if you're buying a company for a great valuation, that's great too, right? But we always are concerned about inhibiting innovation and that entrepreneurial spirit from young companies.
And as you advise a lot of these, startups, do you find many of them actually have that vision of, I'm going to build a company that's going to be mine forever? Or are they all hopping in kind of like, I want to create an idea, I want to scale it quickly, and then I want to sell it as fast as I can? Because the latter seems to be more of what I see.
Yeah. Well, it makes a lot of sense, right? And it's a lot easier. I mean, being an entrepreneur, Brian, is like the hardest job in the world, right? Taking a company from idea to 10 million, 100 million, whatever that number is, even if it's just 10 million, the skill sets needed to found and inspire and get that product launched and raise money, and then to manage a larger number of people is really hard, and that's why I always say it's the hardest job in the world. But people have seen so many companies sell out to large companies, including big tech, and
Yeah.
that seems to be a great segue because then they could do something else. And these days, as you know, Brian, people are sort of really cognizant of balance, of trying different things,
Mhm.
of taking breaks and sabbaticals, traveling the world.
Yeah.
So I think more and more, as you're noting, people are cognizant about that exit strategy. Whereas maybe
Sure.
10, 20 years ago, it would be more like, I really want to take this company and run it forever, or for
Mhm.
10, 20, 30 years. That sort of has changed, and people are more understanding of the options of exiting to
Yeah.
larger companies or strategic buyers.
Yeah.
Things like that have become more, and because more corporate VCs are in the mix as well. So that's
Yeah.
certainly a reality.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like kind of like a no-brainer. Like unless you're really attached to that company, it's almost like you could kind of cash out and then have that ticket to paradise and do what you want for maybe the remainder of your life. So that's certainly empowering. And so with the, all the folks that you're working with, what do you see as some of like the biggest opportunities or the biggest challenges that these young companies are facing right now?
Well, I think those challenges are the same as they've always been, right? Getting
Hmm.
product market fit with the customers, right? Raising money is harder now, right? It was easier in the past 5 years until the last year, 6 months. It's become a lot harder, right? So right now, I'd say it's a harder time unless you have traction and revenue, right? Because raising money is harder and more expensive. That's just the
Hmm.
reality. On the other hand, if you have enough revenue and traction and can gain some ground here, it is a good time to be a young company, right? Because recessions weed out. Not that we're in a recession, but the slowdown weeds out sort of the
Hmm.
weaker companies. So it is an opportunity, but it's obviously a time of constraint and cost cutting, and just sort of trying to make it through and getting more customers.
Yeah.
uh, the days of free money or easy money is over, at least
Yeah.
for the time being. So that's how I see it in general. And then again, the companies, Brian, that are involved with AI are seeing a surge of interest too, right? So they're
Sure.
taking advantage of the hype cycle here and the
Hmm.
potential. And so those companies again have to move quickly, but again, it's not a sure thing either.
Yeah. And so maybe if we stick with that, Jim, like on AI, because just if you're the layman, you're hearing so many different things out there that it's a game changer. It's gonna, unlock the keys to the future. And then for everyone saying that, you have just as many saying this is gonna just totally reshape the workforce. And then even if you want to go to kind of not fear mongering, but even worse than that, that it can go in directions we don't have any control over. What's maybe your take on AI? Like, how would you summarize that?
Well, I think the benefits will be enormous, Brian. It will change our lives, transform our lives, make our lives better. We'll be healthier. We'll you know we'll be able to have more free time. We'll have less headaches. I mean, we'll all have a personal AI, right?
Yeah.
So that's really gonna help us really manage our lives better going forward and be more productive. So those are the
What,
benefits.
yeah. When you say a personal AI, is that almost like a Siri on steroids? Like what can we expect there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all going to have these AIs, personal AIs, like her, right? I think
Mhm.
we've all seen that movie, or many of us have, um, that can help us with different tasks or different issues, or just help us, manage life essentially.
Mhm.
Now, one of the let me digress for a second. One of the concerns there is, and I spoke about it at a conference this week, is that we will have these personal relationships with AI, right? They're going to get so much better. There
Mhm.
already are versions of this now. And once we start having personal relationships with AI and depend on them so robustly, then there are concerns about getting too attached. And
Mhm.
so my prediction was in 5-10 years, there will be a whole new set of psychologists and therapists that are just helping us deal with our AI.
Oh my
In addition
gosh.
to AI
Jeez.
therapists helping us deal with our AI. So it's a scary reality, but I
Wow.
really think that is sort of, a little dystopian, but it is a reality that going forward. So going back to your question, so we'll transform everything. It will make us live longer, right? I mean, I was just speaking to a cardiologist. I'm helping, I'm partnering with Rutgers on some new executive education briefings in different sectors. One of them is healthcare. The potential is enormous. I mean, AI, can help personalize medicine, help predict, what problems and sicknesses you might have. So that is going to be a boon to our longevity, no doubt. That's going to be amazing. Of course, there are, there are negative. So on the flip side, there are negatives like bias, right? We have to be concerned about that and
Sure.
discrimination because of large language models. And again, there is responsible AI, which are toolkits which help us, fix that. The other negative area, and I don't want to digress too much into negative, is misinformation, right? And garbage that's going to be put out there like 100 times as much than today, right? Because
Mhm.
the AI can do it all for you, right? And so if bad actors want to misinform, that's going to be a problem,
Yep.
as well as deep fakes. On the other hand, there is technology. I'm working with a startup that's helping verify, authenticate deep fake or real videos to protect against deep fakes or misinformation. So those are the downsides. But so healthcare, education, right? Education is going to, there's some challenges with AI, right? Because people are using it to cheat, right? Or
Yep.
potentially cheat. So there are, on the other hand, there are the new AI. There's a company in Princeton, a student who created AI to detect plagiarism, right? So there's a battle in that area as well, just in education alone, to protect against plagiarism. On the other hand, it's like a Google on steroids, right?
Yep.
So will be a great tool for students to use, right? And for
Yep.
creativity purposes, Brian, it's amazing, right? It really can help you start your next book or give you
Yep.
ideas for your next article or help you with your artwork, right? Give you ideas for producing something artistic. And so that will be exciting as well. So those are some of
Jeez.
the areas,
I got to tell you, Jim, just like as you rattle those off, it's amazing, but it's a little bit scary, a little kind of freaky. Because the thing I was thinking of, and when you touched on education, is I remember when I was in my earlier years of schooling, you had to go to the library and you had to go to the books. And I can remember, Google's coming, and taking over the world, and all of us students were like, "Oh, well, I'll just go on the web." And you had your teacher, your professor, whoever was like, "No, I need you to go get a book. I want to see you actually cite the book and the page number." And it was like, why am I spending so much time scouring these shelves of these books when I could literally type something in a journal online and have it in a second? And it was like eventually you felt the tide turn where the faculty kind of like threw their hands up, like, you know what, you guys are right. Like, it's all on the web. You can spend a fraction of the time locating the source, go for it. Are we gonna, because the point I'm making is I feel like now with you're hearing all these stories about kids saying, "Oh, I'll just type my essay into Chat GPT," and then boom, it spits out a 2-page beautiful essay for me. And that's obviously cheating. When is faculty and administration going to say, you know what? If you can ask a question and it can give you a great answer, go for it. And I feel like as you do that, you're taking more and more of that creativity away from the student or the individual when we know that the AI can just do so much for us, like start a new book or come up with an idea for a painting or all the things that you listed. I just feel like, how do you keep that originality when it can just do so much for you?
Yeah, and that is a challenge, Brian. It's certainly, we're going to have to plod through this and figure it out, right? How do you teach leveraging AI as a tool, right? And not replacing, right? And importantly, not replacing the student's creativity or just substituting it in. And so it's really a balance. In fact, I'm part of a group of entrepreneurship educators, and I got an email the other day which says the best way to sort of fight against AI for students is to have them do short videos, right, on their
Okay.
answers.
Yep.
Answers should be in short video form, right? And that makes a lot of sense because it's harder to fake that. In fact, I mean, they can still create what they're going to talk about using ChatGPT, but it's
Create their own
harder.
deep
It
fake
at
of
least helps
themselves.
them right. It helps them with presentation skills. Again, they will be able to deep fake at some point. That will happen, right? Because
Mhm.
the technology is so good that we'll be able to sort of make it seem as if you're speaking, right? So for now, having them do video presentations to present their homework or their project or what they've learned is a really good strategy, right? Because again, it helps them sort of present, helps them with those soft skills while
Mhm.
helping them also sort of present what they've learned in video format. So that's just a tactic, that's just,
Yeah.
again, there are several different tactics, but that one makes a lot of sense. So for
Sure.
education, of course, the benefits, well, there are the negatives, which we just mentioned, but the benefits are personalized learning, right? So if you have an AI that's seeing everything you're learning, and say, especially in younger grades, K-12, if there's someone who's not, progressing as quickly, then that AI or can be helping to assign projects or get them the tutoring, AI tutors, right, to
Mhm.
get them up to speed, right? So the prospect of personalized learning, which has been sort of talked about for a decade, right,
Yeah.
is getting closer to reality. So that's education. We've covered education. We've covered healthcare, business. Again, business, all the back end, all the trivial stuff can be automated much more easily, right? From accounting to marketing to sales to all that to production, right?
Yeah.
So that is a boon for businesses that can take advantage of it. So you're going to
Mhm.
have AI enabled, right? Before we said, Brian, tech enabled, right? That means they took advantage of e-commerce and all the technology on the back end. Now the bar has been raised. If you're not leveraging AI, there's a more likelihood you're going to go out of business or you will be disrupted going forward. So that is the challenge and the promise on the business side.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, that we could get to a point where this stuff is so good and so efficient that having too much automation, I mean, what would you do with that? Because I could almost like envision this society where we've replaced this job, that job, the other job, all with AI where it's applicable. And so as you've done that, it's like, well, do we just have this beautiful system that's being operated by the computers? They're doing most of the learning and the dirty work for us. And then, it's kind of like when you used to have to work 80 hours a week in a factory. Now you can work, 40 hours a week in an office. Are we going to reach a point where you could work 10 hours a week from home and just everything else is being kind of taken care of in the economy through these new tools? If we do get there, I mean, that sounds great. It seems like we're removing the workload and freeing up time to pursue passions and such. But I wonder if it can go too far. I know we're going pretty deep with this, but I wonder what the take is on that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a concern. And, we've been talking about universal basic income for a while now, right? And so
Mhm.
that becomes more of a reality or need if there is mass disruption leveraging technology, including AI, right?
Yep.
So clearly, this is the challenge of our time, right? Because formerly, all technology removed sort of blue collar jobs or made them more efficient, right? So if it starts doing white collar jobs, right, and tech
Yep.
jobs and knowledge work jobs, that's scary as well for that segment of the population. So we'll see how that goes, but the promise is it will create new jobs, right? So
Mhm.
depending on who you talk to, what expert, there will be disruption of jobs, right? But there will be additional jobs, just like any new technology, right?
Sure.
Lost jobs in this area, created jobs in the other, and that's the promise. And I'm optimistic about that. I'm 90% optimistic about that. But again, with the power of these tools, you just never know, right? You just don't know how bad the disruptions will be. But I do know that overall, technology will help us and has helped us create a more balanced, more fruitful lives, right?
Sure, sure.
With more time on our hands, more leisure, and that's a benefit for all.
Yeah. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think there's there's a yin and a yang here, a pro and a con to like each kind of comment. And maybe the one last thing I would mention on AI that's just a fear of mine is I feel like when you mentioned the misinformation earlier or the bias that's out there, everybody and their brother sees that now. You have the quote unquote fake news and everything. And social media is just kind of this black hole of information. You can find anything that kind of, resonates with your own bias. So I feel like as a society, we got behind the eight ball with social media and we're playing catch up of like, how do we police this? How do we regulate this? And we haven't gotten that yet. And before we're even trying to kind of wrangle with that, AI is going to just explode that, like you mentioned, to the nth degree. So it's like I don't know who becomes kind of the policeman for it. Cause you said, some of the students coming up with AI that can kind of fact check, what that AI said. But you could see almost other AI that says, well, we're going to fact check that our way. And then you almost have these kind of competing sides where it seems like at some point there has to be this overarching voice that will be the moderator, amid all of this. I don't know if that's the government or if that even can be, if then that kind of infringes on, freedom of speech, or I don't know where that would go.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, it's got to be a public-private partnership, right? Because the privates are surging ahead here, right?
Sure.
And they need to be part of the solution, and they have been sort of lobbying for that. But on the other hand, it's a global sort of a battle, arms race, right, to get these tools. So it's not just the States, right? We're at the lead right now, but you have China, you have other countries that are positioning themselves to be leaders in AI, right? Because the bonuses or the potential bonuses and power by being a leader in AI are paramount, right? It's pretty obvious, right? And so we have to collaborate more, right? The governments have to collaborate more, and also the privates have to collaborate more on some framework, that protects us, right, and protects the world. And so, at this time, there's tensions in the world. So that's really, that may be a bit harder to do, right? You have a race for power via AI, but there's got to be a parallel race for regulation and oversight and safety via AI. So that's the real concern. Hopefully we can, I think smart people are working on it. Hopefully we can get to that better place. And earlier rather than later, because ultimately we don't want to be in the same position regarding social media where the cat was out of the bag and it's
and we can't catch it.
Damage. Yeah. So.
And you gave me a great segue to what I thought might have to be a huge kind of pivot. But I wanted to ask you, Jim, like where we are on the global stage, because it is true that you see whoever had the lead in technology or innovation has had a tremendous advantage, amongst competitors. And right now I'm actually reading The Making of the Atomic Bomb, and it's just a really interesting book, but you could see firsthand as all these folks immigrated to the US, the best and the brightest. And then as we were able to create, the atomic bomb, that changed the course of history, of humanity, just because of this knowledge and this technology. And so with that said, you mentioned a moment ago that we're still in the lead. Do you feel that the US does have, the advantage here? Where do we stand? You always just hear US and China as kind of the two lone superpowers right now. And then all the talk about, Taiwan and kind of how they've, cornered the market from a semiconductor standpoint. What's some of the layout there? If you had to forecast, 5-10 years down the road, what does some of that look like from a global standing?
Well, that's hard to say.
It's a whole nother episode. But
I think it would still be mostly the U.S. and China, but India is a player, right? India is coming on strong. right? And so I think by those three areas, and Europe, of course, but so it'll be those four players, right? I think it will still be very competitive, right? And I think we'll come to a better place just because I think the world powers will understand, just like the atomic bomb, that the AI is so powerful that there has to be safeguards put in place, especially, to prevent it from bad actors, non-state actors getting hold of it and wreaking damage, on society and societies around the world. So it's hard to predict, but I'm hopeful that, the world has come together in the past and it will come together in the future, to really come to some understanding where we need to do what's best for the common good.
Yep. And do you feel that there should be, kind of in that same vein, more collaboration or some more isolation? And maybe as kind of like a case study, for instance, right now we have TikTok, and TikTok, is huge, of course. And, there's a lot of, negative news about it, both from a mental and emotional standpoint for our youth, but also any potential kind of information leaking or spying, by the Chinese. And then you have, Instagram Reels, I understand really to be kind of what we're hoping can just overtake TikTok here in the States. What do you think about that? Like, do we want to develop some sort of software or programs that then we can expose to China and have all on one platform? Or do we want to have that a little bit more segmented?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's it's really tough to predict, right? We've had the lead in social media, and now China has great traction with TikTok. And I think if you just put safeguards, they'll probably spin it out or do something that protects the data from getting into the hands of governments. But also they should provide access for our companies too. So there's this sort of, unfair situation where our social media companies aren't in China, yet TikTok is everywhere, right? So
Correct.
I think they'll come to some type of agreement there. But again, that's a potential threat to us, frankly, misinformation, right? I mean, elections, we really need to be on top of this because the potential for danger is so much more now, particularly with AI and the massive information that can be produced, with the touch of a button, right? Because the AI can take care of all the misinformation. In the past, you need a human to create the misinformation and then distribute it. Now, you can program AI to do that. And so, again, 100 times more misinformation, 100 times better, fake, and deep fake misinformation, including videos, right? So they can create videos which shows some politician saying something or doing something. And that before you can authenticate it and verify and deny it, the veracity of it, it's already been seen by 1 billion people, right? So that is a reality that has to be sort of really fought against with all the tools at our disposal. And I'm afraid, it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a race where the deepfakes will take the lead. And then the authorities will take the lead, and so it'll go back and forth, a race against the tools and the technology. And so for at least the short term, it's going to be very tricky. And that's one of the things. I'm not sure I mentioned it, but we're creating a teen course or a summer camp online course that is teaching kids about future tech skills. And one of them is going to be about how to understand what's fake news or misinformation, right? So that young people who are the most exposed to this and the most gullible will have some sense and some suspicion of what's true and what's not.
Yep. That's great. And it's funny. I swear it's like you have my questions ahead of me because you're giving me perfect segues. I wanted to ask you, like, kids that are coming up, they're interested in this. Maybe they're listening to this episode. And I don't know if it's anything like when I was in school, everything that we've discussed over the past hour, I knew absolutely nothing about, and there was no course or subject that even remotely related to this. So maybe there is a bit more out there, at the high school level, but you're a kid, you're interested in the cybersecurity issues, AI, tech. What should they be studying? Like what courses, what path? Is it getting into coding? Is it getting into software engineering? Like you just mentioned that teen forum you have, which sounds awesome. What avenues are out there for them to try and become a thought leader in this space?
Yeah, well, fortunately, everything is online. So it's just finding sort of the right provider, right? So on the other hand, LinkedIn is a great provider, right? YouTube,
Hmm.
sometimes you have to decipher what's what. Just getting up to speed. A lot of people are learning, Brian, on TikTok, on
Yeah.
Reels, right? These short form bits, right? So you can learn a lot, but again, you have to be concerned about who is the provider,
Yeah.
and you want to make sure those folks are legitimate and
But I
well
guess my question
regarded.
was
Because
like on a more formal education level, like do we have, can you go to college right now? Can you pick a course that's in AI? Like, does that exist yet?
yes, you can. Depending on, most colleges have something, right? At least basic, right? If you go to a technology institute, you obviously have more. You could do a major in AI. So they
Okay.
do exist,
Okay.
and they're continually updating those courses. For younger people, again, most of it's online. And there's probably some certificate programs as well that they can take
Hmm.
advantage of. Because I'm not sure the high schools just yet are really getting into that. Like, on the other hand, there are online courses which can be, which the schools can partner with, which they'll give you sort of credit for. So there are possibilities like that. So the education is coming and is here. Again, it's just about deciphering it and staying up to date.
Got it. Yeah, because I think that's one of the gripes you often hear is, you can go to college, spend a fortune, take on this debt, and then you run the risk of the skills that you just learned over 4 years. Once you get out there, they're yesterday's news. They're not really applicable anymore. And you see that nowhere more so than in the tech space, where it's just like at breakneck speed, these innovations. It almost seems like we could get to a point where you graduate high school and it's like, if this is your interest, you start like an education inside, the private arena, almost working in tandem with these companies. Otherwise, I don't know how you can keep up with it all.
Yeah, but that's 100% accurate, right? Because the code, the technology and the software and the development is always changing, right? And in fact, one of the companies I work with does that. Once you graduate from college, they give you a 12-week course to get you up to speed on the latest software that companies are looking to hire, right? So there are opportunities like that, and there are programs like that. So that's good. But the reality is, Brian, as you can see, we've been teaching coding, right? There's been this whole movement to get people to code.
Mhm.
The AI is going to do it for us. So the most important, skill set, and one of the things we're teaching in this course is about critical thinking, right? The ability and life and the ability to continue learning, right? Those are really important skill sets.
Yeah.
So, but it's really come very quickly, right? Because again, we've always been saying they need to learn how to code. Well,
Yeah.
you don't really need to learn how to code anymore. You need to understand how the code works. You need to understand how to prompt the AI. In fact, that's sort of the new skill set that's again going to continually evolve and develop. But that's been sort of just in the past 10, 20 years, that's been a huge change now that AI can do it for us.
Correct. Yep. And so maybe to kind of round things out here, I know we're doing a bit of a tour around the world. So when people think of tech, and I know we talked a little bit earlier about actual funding and everything, and that really had a spotlight shown on it earlier this year with, Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic and some of these bank collapses, a lot of them that were their depositor base was in, venture capital or tech startups. So a lot of that, people think tech, they think Silicon Valley, the small, tiny little place in California. Then so much, during COVID moved to Austin, to Texas. You and I, we're here in Jersey. You do so much on the East Coast. Right in my backyard, we got Netflix moving over at the old Fort Monmouth. Do you think there's going to be more movement from California to Texas, could Jersey become a tech hub at some point? And what is it that prompts that creates such a little ecosystem like happened in Silicon Valley, so many years ago?
Yeah. Well, there certainly has been a proliferation of tech hubs around the country and around the world, right? So that's
Mhm.
happened. Silicon Valley is no longer the only place you need to be, right? It still is very strong for
Yep.
sure. But the New Jersey, New York area and Philadelphia have grown considerably over the past 10 years. So we are essentially a tech hub.
Yep.
But post COVID, and now that people can be anywhere, right?
Mhm.
That's a stark reality on societies and governments and local regions and states that the the real reason people want to stay somewhere is because of quality of life, right? Remember, you could work remote almost anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Almost anywhere you can be. You just have to come back for maybe monthly meetings for most, at least tech companies, right? Um, so that's the opportunity, right? And I did my other TED talk is on this when tech ecosystems move to the cloud, right? And you can work anywhere. What happens?
Mhm.
But so the reality is, New Jersey and this region has been in a good place. We've benefited, particularly New Jersey, has benefited from the pandemic, where a lot of people moved out of the cities, New York
Yep.
City primarily, right, and moved to the suburbs, right. And we have one of the best quality of lives, schools, culture, communities in the country, right? And so
Yep.
we've grown, and a lot of smart people came and have been starting businesses as well, right? So,
Mhm.
and our government, our local state government has done a good job of providing programs and incentives as well. Um, have we been able to? So what I've been saying, Brian, is we've had like a 2 or 3 year window to really take all these smart people, entrepreneurs, and just embrace them and hug them and
Yep.
keep them here somehow,
Sure.
some way. And obviously, if we lower taxes, that would go a long way, right?
Yeah,
But
I'd say
if
so.
we can't lower taxes because we're a high cost state,
Yep.
um, at the very least, is sort of cheerlead and embrace these people and make it as easy as possible to start and grow businesses. And when they
Yep.
make a lot of money, maybe not tax them as much, right? Because again, at the end of the day, you want to raise your family at a great place to go for have kids go to school, right, and to be close to culture, right. So we have a lot to offer. We are so lucky. But
Yep.
again, the competition are very aggressive, and that's cheaper, sunnier
Yep.
states, mostly in the South, right? And that those are they have compelling offers and reasons to relocate. And most of it's, a lot of it's financial, but other reasons are, you know, weather related.
Sure.
But so that's where we are in a nutshell. I think that's we're doing all right, but we have to do better and continually
Yeah,
do better, because the reality is people will go places where they can save a lot of money.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the tax thing is huge. And I think it was a bit of a wake up call when you saw just that exodus from California of how quickly people can make up their mind that, I don't know if I really like it here anymore. And then boom, you lost this gigantic revenue source. And maybe my last question here, just kind of forward looking, um, I feel that a strength of America forever has been immigration, in particular, in a sense, being almost like a brain drain for the world. That the best, the brightest, the hardest working, they all come here for this American dream, and then America is just this huge beneficiary of that. So in the tech space, we have a lot of homegrown talent. The Gates, the Dells, Zuckerbergs, the like, and then we have Elon Musk's and people that come from around the world. Do you think it will stay that way?
I do hope so, because you're right. It is the key to this country's success, this state's success, New Jersey, but our country's success, right? Our immigrants, right? If we didn't have the so much talent coming from around the world, we would not be, the world's superpower, right? The biggest and most robust economy and most entrepreneurial and innovative economy. We are so dependent on immigrants, and so I'm hopeful that continues, right? We're still a beacon of opportunity and light and hope. It's getting harder though, because other regions, other countries are understanding they want to keep their great talent, right? And so they're reforming their business structures to make it easy to start businesses and grow businesses. They're trying to replicate Silicon Valley, right, with their academic infrastructure and the government public-private partnerships. So they're doing a great job. So it's going to be harder going forward, but I'm hopeful that we will continue, and I'm hopeful, and I continue to lobby our politicians to make us so much easier to come to this great country, because we need it not just for innovation and talent and entrepreneurship, but just to keep our birth rates declining. We need more people. We don't have enough people to fill our jobs. There's a labor shortage. We're at full employment essentially, and so those immigrants are really important to our success as a country and our economic vibrancy, not only now but into the short and long term.
Yeah, there's so many insights here, so many things that we could make a whole episode in and of itself. But Jim, kind of in closing, where can people learn more? Where can they follow you? If people are listening and saying, "I want to get involved. I want to do more to be an innovator," what are some of the resources that you have available?
Sure. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll add you to I have a monthly email update, which tells you about all the things that are going on in the state and region around innovation entrepreneurship. And that's probably the best way. And then hopefully we'll meet up you can always call me. I'm very easy to access and happy to jump on a short call to be helpful in any way, shape, or form. And as I mentioned, we can leave it in the show notes, but these two courses, I have two entrepreneurship, one entrepreneurship, one tech course for teenagers this summer and on demand. So if you just reach out to me, one is futuretechexperience.org and the other one is globalentrepreneurshipexperience.org. So those for people who have kids or grandkids or nephews, nieces that want to sort of learn online, that's an opportunity as well. And again, as mentioned, any executives who want to try not to be disrupted by AI, reach out to me and I'll send you the information for that Rutgers collaboration on AI.
That's awesome. And again, everyone, we'll put that in the show notes so you could check it out. But Jim, thank you so much for making the time. I mean, this is such a great conversation, things that people need to know. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. This has been really a great, thoughtful conversation.
Yep. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Caderna Podcast. I'm Brian Caderna. Today, we had the pleasure of speaking with James Barrood, and be sure to check him out, all the latest insights and everything in the show notes, and we will see you next time.
This podcast is intended for the general public and for informational purposes only. The show does not provide any recommendations or investment advice regarding any specific account type, service, strategy, or product, or to otherwise act in any fiduciary or other capacity. Please contact a financial professional for guidance and information that is specific to your situation. Brian Caderna does not provide tax or legal advice. Please contact your accountant or legal advisor to discuss your situation. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Caderna Financial Team, and opinions stated are their own. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. References to specific securities, asset classes, and financial markets are for illustrative purposes only and do not constitute a solicitation, offer, or recommendation to purchase or sell a security. Brian Caderna is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. OSJ 300 Broadacres Drive, Suite 175, Bloomfield, New Jersey, 07003. Phone number 973-244-4420. Securities products and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Caderna Financial Team is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. California Insurance License Number 0K04194.